So you've probably heard that breath work is really good for you, and that's what a lot of the blog was about. But it's not just breath work. It's also about learning to be mindful of what you're experiencing in your body, which all sounds great and well until you come with your client, try to get them to do these practices, and they're like, "This is silly, this is stupid," because they're there to work out, but they got this super type A personality and they're super stressed out. My point is that not everyone's going to go for these ideas, and we can mask them in different ways. What I want to do though is start with the people that will be more able to do these, that are more going to be into it, they're going to be more willing. So let's go over both camps. So the first point is we're going to use some of our mobility balls, and this is where, especially our 1-pounders are really helpful because we don't want a lot of tension in the body. If you go too heavy on these drills, we can create tension which goes against everything we're trying to do. Secondarily, it gives people some feedback. So there's something to focus upon. Sometimes when people are doing breath work, they're too worried about all the judgments that are going on. Am I doing this right? Am I feeling what you're supposed to be feeling? All these things that are actually counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish, which is why we don't get super strict with how we're breathing right off the bat. So what we're going to do is use more generalized concepts, but teach you how to use movement to also help with a lot of these patterns. Because if we can soften our bodies, if we can learn to relax our bodies, we can actually help the brain and the mind relax as well, which is going to help people with their sleep, which is going to be great for how they perform in the gym, which is also going to be good in decision making outside the gym, like what they do nutritionally, because they're going to be less likely to do things like emotional eating. So let's get into some of the ways we can actually teach this. So what I like to do is start about hip width apart, and we're going to sink into our feet. So all I say is basically unlock your knees and sink in the middle of your foot. If I do that, you see I nicely relax, and see how my low back just relaxes as well. So I almost feel like my sternum relaxes too. So I'm not trying to slouch, I'm just trying to soften my body. So that's going to be step number one. And I don't get too much into this right off the bat. I just want people to try to be aware of those simple factors. The reason I say soften instead of relax is because if you say relax to people, it tends to tighten them up more. So we use the word soften. So what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on breathing in through our nose and out through our nose with our tongue at the roof of our mouth. The reason for the tongue at the roof of the mouth is it activates a little bit more core stability and makes it a little bit easier to do the breath. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some imagery. Imagine that, again, there's a string being pulled up by my wrist. So I'm not going to do a front raise like you see in the gym. I'm going to try to use my breath and I'll push through my feet to make my arms float up. So a string or a balloon expanding as I breathe in, and then I'm going to sink and push back out. So now my client has a goal, right? They want to make the weights float. So I want you to get the idea of making the weight float. So breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And as I soften down every time, I feel a little bit looser in my hips and my low back, and I start to actually become more focused and even energized well. So you can do that for 6 to 10 repetitions, depending upon how comfortable people are with it. And another pattern we can use, and we can change patterns to bring people's awareness back to what they're doing, because sometimes if you do too many, their brain starts to wander and they forget all of the concepts we're talking about, is we'll allow the arms to now come up, but also come out. So this would require a little bit longer of a breath, or I'll show you how to modify it. So as we come up, breathe in, and as we get about sternum height, we're going to open. We're not going to straighten our arms. We're going to keep them soft. And exhale, turn and exhale. In and exhale. Now, probably your clients are not going to be able to breathe that efficiently, which gives you a little feedback. They're holding a lot of residual tension, which is why they can have tightness, they can have pain, and so forth. So you can definitely go in, exhale, in, and exhale. From there, we can add a third pattern. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cross our arms. So we're going to cross our arms like so. Breathe in, let the arms float. When I get about to my forehead, they're going to start to rotate as I go ahead and push out. So it would be an inhale, and then an exhale. If your clients can't breathe that long, it could be inhale, exhale, inhale, and exhale. That's a third pattern we can use. The fourth pattern is we can sort of change the angle again. So what we can do is add a little neck movement into it, because again, a lot of people have cervical tightness and the upper quarter tightness, especially in the traps and the pecs and so forth. So we can do this very in a soft stance. Is now our arms are going to turn out. So I'm going to sink down, breathe in, but as I breathe in, I'm going to turn my head gently to one side. As my arms kind of front, my head's going to turn and I'm going to sink down. In and out. In and out. So once you get familiar with them, you can combine them as much as you want. So it could be one repetition, in, out. The next one, in, out. Next repetition, in, out. Last repetition, in, out, in, and out. So we're getting shoulder mobility, we're getting core stability, we're getting hip mobility, we're relaxing and regulating that nervous system. We're energizing the nervous system too from being an overly tense state. We're improving how our myofascial system is working. Now, that's for people that are going to be engaged with this type of practice. For those people that need to go ahead and be kind of tricked, lack for a better word, or have it subtly thrown in what they're doing, we're going to show you some other ways you can apply these techniques to people that have a harder time slowing down and may not be so apt to adopt these methods right off the bat, but we can still employ them subtly with them so they feel like they're working out, but still getting some of these benefits that we've been discussing. I get asked all the time, Josh, I love what you're talking about. I love the science that you're using, but I just don't think it's something my clients are going to be willing to do. They're too type A, they're too just wanting to work out and get into it. That's fine. We can do that. Now, I always recommend educating people on benefits of doing these practices, but if they're still like, hey, I just want to work out, I just want to lose weight and things like that, because these type of practices have been shown to help those things, we can subtly do it by other means. So one of the things we can do is adopt one of my favorite stances, which is a horse stance. So to find your horse stance, you're going to put your feet together, turn your heels out, that's one, toes out, that's two, heels out, that's three, toes out, that's four, heels out, that's five. Now, you can adjust a little bit from here if you want. And I recommend for most people probably turn their feet slightly out. You don't want to be too far out, but a slight turn out so that when you push your knees out to get in the position, you're very comfortable and stable and you're not putting excessive pressure upon the knee. Now, from here, we can start actually getting people to feel like they're working, but also learning some of these breath techniques, because the more efficient they get with the breath, the more reps they're going to be able to do, and the more they're going to be able to train harder. So what we're going to do first is just remind them that the knees go out. I want to stay upright. I don't want to sit back like a typical squat. So as low as you can that your hip mobility allows for. If you need to adjust the stance, totally fine. So the first time what we're going to do is we're going to go just to about shoulder height. So what I'm going to do is my 1 pound balls, again, because I don't want to use a lot of force in my upper body, I'm going to take a deep breath in as I push through my feet. The arms are going to float up. Then I'm going to exhale, float down. In and out. In and out. If that gets a little easy, it'll be in out, in, out. Then we can cross. In, out, in, out. And we can do a little different drill here. So now we're going to cross, but now we're going to sink as we pull both balls apart. And I'm going to turn my head gently to one side, then allow them to sink. Inhale, exhale. Inhale and exhale. So if you just started off with 5 of each of those, but did them continuously, people are going to start to feel like they're working. Their heart rate is gently going to come up, but the more they can soften their bodies, the more they're going to be able to get through that. If they start to tighten up, if they start to hold their breath, they're going to find that they get fatigued very quickly. And that's one of the other reasons that we're doing this, is that it increases movement efficiency. So this is one great way to teach people how to use breath work in a way that they feel like they're working out and they're still doing something for their training. We'll get to one more in a second. So there's always ways to get people to do these drills if we add a little bit more movement. That's why I'm so adamant about our MIM system, because a lot of times, you're told to do breath work, but if you're like, my client just hates this, then you feel like you can't do something that's very beneficial with them. This employs, again, mobility, stability, breath work, myofascial work. So we're getting so much done at once. So what we're going to do is, another way to sort of slide this into your training, especially during your warm up, is to do some lateral walking. So imagine this like a super dosed lateral band walk with no lateral band. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our feet together. We're going to sink down again. Lowering your body is really key. We're going to lift one leg up and we're going to move it out about what we would think is a little wider than hip width, or about hip width apart. Softly set our foot down, sink. Now I'm going to breathe in, out, shift, and down. So I'm not trying to use a lot of speed here. Shift, down, in, out. I can also change the pattern. Shift, in, touch, touch, down. Now we're going to go out. Shift, and shift. So you see I can do all this work with movement too. So they're learning how to stabilize. They're feeling their glutes. They're feeling their legs. They're getting ankle mobility. They're learning foot stability. They're even thinking that they're working their shoulders, but really what we're doing is trying to soften. And the reason I like the lateral movement too is because when we do the forward movement, those are great, but it feels like, again, we're only getting the breath this way. When we start going laterally, we feel like we're expanding that breath a little bit more in that 360 degrees that we want. So start playing with these different drills, as well as other ones I shared below, to see how you can build breath work and do all this great nervous system regulation while still working out and building up some great qualities of fitness.